Hey guys, welcome back to ProjectTube. Today we have the FLSUN S, a resin-based DLP printer from GearBest. They sent it to me for a review, so let's get started. Now, I went ahead and unboxed it. The whole thing was taped up all crazily. It took me forever with a razor knife to get it out, but this is what came with it. You have the actual printer right here, the enclosure cover, which also has a UV LED in there for curing your prints. The resin, 500 grams of it, power cord, a little USB stick with software and some test prints on it, and then a mask and some gloves, which I have gloves and I am not going to wear a mask. I mean, I could, I just probably look like an idiot. So let's take a look at the printer specs and see what it's all about as described on GearBest. FLSUN S complete 3D printer with 4.3-inch touchscreen, the US plug, and $637.50 is what it's priced at, but my coupon code gets it for $529 and some change. I've seen it on a flash sale for $509 before, so you're going to spend about $500 for this printer. Printing size 108 by 68 by 200 millimeters. That's not very big, especially if you're used to printing on like a CR10S like I am, but the detail will probably outweigh the size constraints of it, but we'll see. 4.3-inch touchscreen, that's cool. Industrial grade Z-axis, I'm sure. Just supports UV resin filament. Don't put super glue in it or anything like that. Supports USB offline printing and Wi-Fi online printing. That's cool that it has Wi-Fi on board. And that's what it looks like. Let's go check this thing out. All right, let's begin. Let's get this thing going. So let's go ahead and turn it on. I already got it plugged in. And as you can see, the startup screen pops up, starting up. Takes a second. And there we go. So this thing pretty much walks you through it. As you can see, it says auto leveling, remove model, clean box, loose screws. So you loose these four screws up here. This whole piece can come off. So once you're done printing, you can pull off your model and post-process it, let's say. And this slides on, this screws down, and it's on. I'd say this is kind of a little flimsy up here, but it could be because it's at the very top of the extent of the Z-axis, but we'll see. So you loosen these four screws, and then I believe you go ahead and take this cover off. This is where your resin is going to go down in here, and this screws back on here like this. That covers just to preserve your UV resin when you're not using it, basically. So now we can go ahead and say next. The printer is now lowering itself, which will probably take forever, but basically it's going to go ahead and hit its lower Z stop, which I believe is probably over here, maybe not. Either way, it'll hit Z stop, and then we'll go ahead and tighten the four screws, and that auto levels it basically. So let's get to it. I'll come back when it's done, because this is going to probably take like an hour at this rate. All right, I went ahead and tightened up the screws on all sides. It had already gone down to the lowering position. You just tighten them up, and you hit done on the screen, and it raises 100 millimeters up. The screen display is ready to print, and now I think we can put a resin in. All right, let's go ahead and put this resin in. Not really sure how much you need, but let's put in up to the top there. That's probably good enough. Hopefully it's not too much. That would be bad. All right, now we need to print something. So let's go into the print view here. One thing you need to look at is this guy right here, auto home. We want it to auto home. We want it to drop down into the thing before it starts printing. So you can check that or uncheck that. Now it's not doing it. There it goes. Auto home at printing start is, whatever that means. We want auto home printing. That means the bed will level, go all the way down to the bottom and begin printing. Otherwise it would just start printing right here, and that's not what we want. So we'll go ahead and hit home. Go ahead and into our SD, or sorry, not our SD, our USB stick that they gave us. I already post-processed, or pre-processed I should say, the Bearded Yell model. I really want to do that, but we're not going to start out with that. We're going to start out with some of their test models. It's probably safer that way. And test model and MMS, and let's go with their Cobra ring. Come on, you can do it. Select Cobra ring. All right, now I assume we hit start. Okay. So now the bed is obviously going to go down in auto home because we pressed that auto home or unchecked it. It comes default as checked, so make sure you do that. I'm going to make sure that this stuff does not overflow. That would be bad. And then I'll go ahead and put the lid on here, as we don't want all this UV coming in here and activating our resin. It's not very fast. It's not very fast at all. All right, we touched the resin. And is it going to overflow? It's close. Nope. Now we can put our lid on. So we'll go ahead and sink our lid down on here. Let it print. Well, the test print is done. And here it is, still stuck on the platform. But it looks really clean. I haven't washed it off yet. I got some resin, I don't know if you can see it, on the top of the plate there. So as soon as I remove this plate, I'm going to get resin everywhere. But I think the model came out pretty good. I will get this cleaned off and then stuck in the UV curing chamber, and we'll go from there. I went ahead and rinsed it off just with some water. I did use some 91% isopropyl alcohol as well, just a little bit. The water doesn't really dissolve the resin. And after I remove it and everything like that, I'll clean up this whole plate with the isopropyl alcohol. But I didn't want to rinse off like the details. So that's it pretty much now being rinsed. And we're going to go ahead and stick this into the enclosure portion and turn on the UV light and totally cure it.
Let's take a look at the slicing software that comes with the printer. It's called Creation Workshop, and I would say it's just so-so. Definitely not very easy to manipulate your object inside the printer by scaling it or moving it. It's just very rudimentary types of user interface when it comes to that kind of thing. But to load a model, you just come up here. This is one of the test prints. It already has support that's been saved with the STL, but if you wanted to add support, you come over here and hit the automatic support generation, and it works pretty well. You can also add individual trees by themselves. And before you slice your model, you have to save it. So you come up here to save, and then you can hit slice. To configure the software, you have your machine configuration right here, which comes default for the FLSUN, but if you wanted to hook it up to something else or slice for something else, you could do that. And then your slicing profile over here to change the slice thickness and the exposure time and so on and so forth. Default settings have worked pretty much fine for me. And that's about it. After you slice it, you can see the slice view, which this model isn't sliced, so you can't see it. But altogether, it works, but it's not very user intuitive.
So here are 4 of the models that I printed on the FLSUN S. The first of which was the Cobra ring. It came out really great, but not really my cup of tea when it comes to models that I like to print. My favorite is this fancy skull. The detail on this is amazing. I mean, it's just a beautifully printed model. And one thing I like about this is I printed both this and the Sorceress fully solid, so I didn't hollow them out. While that uses a lot of resin, it feels heavy and it feels really nice and solid, which I like. The Sorceress came out really well except for the hands. The detail from the legs up to the hands is great, but the hands did not turn out that great. I'm not sure if that's because I scaled it down a little bit or what, but altogether great. And then of course the Bearded Yell, the only issue with this was the bottom plate. I think I caused that when I pre-processed it and hollowed it out. But the detail on the beard and everything is just amazing, amazing. So who would I recommend this printer to? I definitely wouldn't recommend it as a first printer or possibly even as a second printer unless you specifically are trying to do miniatures and small things like that. This printer works really nice, and for the price point in the resin market, it's not too bad. One thing that I like about this particular printer and my plans for it is that Maker Juice has a wax cast resin for casting in metal, and I'm going to be doing a review on this next and seeing what kind of detail we can get out of a resin print and casting it in brass or aluminum. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified when I put that out. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.